Divorced men. What's the most shocking truth you learned too late to fix anything? Story 1. I found out my ex-wife never actually wanted to marry me. We were married 9 years. We had a nice house, 2 cars, 1 kid, and matching Christmas pajamas. I thought we were solid but boring, which I figured was what real adult love looked like. Divorce hit fast. She fell out of love, needed to find herself, all the usual phrases you can Google. I was devastated, but I also blamed myself. Maybe I worked too much, maybe I stopped being romantic. I swallowed the guilt because it felt better than thinking she was just cruel. 6 months after the divorce, her older cousin got drunk at a BBQ and decided I deserved to know the truth. She told me my ex had a bet with her friends in college, who could get a ring and a house before 30. My ex apparently said, I don't care if I love him, I just need stability first. Love can come later with the right guy. I was stability. I was the starter husband. The cousin told me about screenshots and old group chats, how my ex bragged when I proposed, how she'd said things like, he's not my dream guy, but he'd be a great dad, and he's stupid in love. That's enough for now. The worst part wasn't realizing she never loved me the way I loved her. It was realizing that our entire marriage was her waiting for later. Later came. She left. I'm just the prologue in a story she'll never let me finish. Story 2. I learned too late that my own mother-in-law had been sabotaging my marriage from day one. On purpose. My ex always had moods. 1 week she'd be sweet. The next she was accusing me of hiding things, of planning to leave, of secretly resenting her. I went to therapy, read books, did everything to communicate better. After the divorce, I ran into her cousin at the grocery store. We did that awkward small talk. Then she just blurted, you know her mom told her you'd cheat, right? Like, from the first month? Turns out my ex grew up with a father who cheated repeatedly. Her mom never healed, just turned bitter and paranoid. So when we got engaged, my mother-in-law apparently sat my wife down and said things like, men are only nice until they lock you down. Watch his phone. The second you trust him is the second he'll humiliate you. If he's working late, he's cheating. Don't be stupid like I was. So my wife did exactly that. She went through my phone, tested me, picked fights over nothing, accused me of affairs I never had. I thought she was insecure. I didn't know she was following a script someone else wrote. By the time I found out, it was over. Papers signed. Contact only through lawyers. No more explaining. No more defending myself. The betrayal isn't just that my wife didn't trust me. It's that another woman destroyed us using a man she never met. And I'll never get the chance to look either of them in the eye and ask, was it worth it? Story 3. I learned I'd been turning down promotions because my wife was secretly blocking them. I work in IT. Over the years, I kept being passed over for advancement. My boss said higher-ups liked me, but sensed resistance to more responsibility. I thought it was code for, you're just not good enough. We divorced because, according to her, I was too passive, never took initiative, no ambition. Those words haunted me. I believed her. A year after the divorce, I went out for drinks with a former coworker who quit and felt free enough to talk. He asked if I ever wondered why I didn't get the project lead job 3 years ago. Apparently, my ex emailed my boss behind my back. From my personal email, she'd memorized my password. She wrote, hey, thanks for considering me, but after discussing with my wife, I think it's not the right time to take on more stress. I'd rather stay where I am for now. She did this more than once. She'd delete the sent email, empty the trash, act surprised when I'd come home frustrated about being overlooked. Then she'd use it against me in fights. You're content being average. You don't even try to move up. Why? According to my coworker, she told his wife once that she likes knowing exactly where he is and when he comes home. The more important men think they are, the worse they treat you. So she kept me small to feel safe, then divorced me for being small. By the time I found out, the positions were filled, the damage done, and the narrative about me, lazy, unambitious, already part of our divorce story. You can rebuild a resume. But how do you rebuild the years where someone pressed your brakes and blamed you for not moving? Story 4. My marriage therapist turned out to be my ex's individual therapist first. We went to counseling near the end. I walked in thinking this was neutral ground. A referee. A chance. I was ready to own my mistakes. The therapist always seemed a bit more gentle with my ex. Gave her more space, more validation. I thought maybe I really was the problem and this was her trying to get me to see it. So I pushed down my discomfort and played along. After the divorce, I ended up on a date with a woman who worked in mental health admin. She saw the practice name in my phone when I mentioned therapy and froze. You know she was your ex's therapist first, right? Like, for years. In our state, that's technically allowed if they disclose the conflict and both parties consent. I never got that disclosure. So I'd been pouring my heart out in front of someone who already knew my ex's version of me. All the stories told with me off-screen. All the details framed to justify leaving. Suddenly, all those sessions made horrible sense. Why my concerns were reframed as control. Why my ex's stonewalling was called self-protection. Why every time I asked, "What can we do?" the therapist said, "Sometimes the healthiest choice is to let go." We never stood a chance. The room was tilted from the start. The shocking truth isn't just that I was outnumbered. It's that I paid for the privilege of watching my marriage be gently talked into the grave by someone I should have been able to trust. Story 5. I learned I was the other man in my own marriage. During the divorce, my ex swore she never cheated. Emotional, maybe, she said, but never physical. I believed her, because the alternative meant my entire life was a joke. 2 years later, I got a message on Facebook from a guy I didn't know. Long paragraph, nervous tone. He said he'd just found out his wife had been cheating for years with my ex. He sent screenshots, not just sexts, airline confirmations, hotel photos, voice notes with my ex whispering, "He thinks I'm at a conference," and laughing. Dates and times lined up perfectly with the girls' trips, work trainings, and visiting my mom weekends she'd told me about. Here's the twist. This guy thought she was single. In her world with him, I was the abusive ex she escaped. She told him we were already separated for years, that I stalked her, that I wouldn't sign papers. He genuinely thought he was the hero helping her rebuild her life. So while I was home cooking, picking up our kid, folding her laundry, and trying to reconnect, she was across the country introducing herself with my last name removed, telling strangers she was trapped in a marriage she had already rewritten. By the time I knew the truth, we were both divorced. She'd moved in with someone else entirely. The guy who messaged me said, "I'm sorry, man. I had no idea." The most shocking truth wasn't that she cheated. It was realizing there were whole parallel lives where I only existed as a villain in her story. And there's no fixing anything once you understand someone was willing to burn your reality just to make their fantasy coherent. Story 6. I found out my marriage was basically a visa application with a tux. I'm American. She moved here on a student visa. We met at a mutual friend's party. She was charming, smart, nervous about going back home with nothing. I fell hard. When we got married, she cried about finally having a home. I thought it was romantic. We struggled, but I thought it was normal early marriage stuff. Then, right around the 5-year mark of the marriage, she changed. Less affectionate, more cold. Started talking about needing space, finding herself, not wanting to be defined as someone's wife. Within a year, we were done. Divorce wasn't messy, almost too clean. She didn't fight for much, just wanted some furniture and a chance to start over. I assumed we'd both just failed. The truth came out when I went to renew my passport, and the clerk mentioned casually, "Oh, your ex adjusted status through you, right? She should be eligible for citizenship now." I said, "Yeah, I guess." And he added, "Those 5-year marriages are brutal, man. A lot of people just hang in until they don't need the spouse anymore." That stuck in my head. So I messaged a mutual friend who'd always been weirdly standoffish with me and asked, "Be honest, did she ever say why she really married me?" He hesitated, then sent a wall of text. She'd told them before our wedding, "If this works, great. If not, at least I'll have my papers and a safety net." She joked about putting in the 5 years. Apparently, she literally counted it down with her friends. My entire idea of us was 2 people building a life. Her idea was, use this to build my life, then eject. By the time I learned the truth, she already had her permanent status, a new apartment, and a new guy. You can't fix a marriage that was a transaction you didn't know you signed. Story 7. I learned my ex-wife used my name like a credit card she never intended to pay off. During the marriage, money was always tight. I blamed my salary and random emergencies, car issues, medical bills, unexpected expenses. She insisted on handling the bills because numbers stress you out, and I let her. I thought that was teamwork. After the divorce, I moved into a tiny apartment and started over. A few peaceful months went by. Then I got a call from a debt collector asking when I planned to pay my $27,000 personal loan. I had never taken out a personal loan. Turns out my ex had been opening accounts in my name for years. Store cards, online lines of credit, that personal loan. She knew my SSN, my mother's maiden name, everything. She paid just enough to keep things quiet while we were married, then stopped the second she walked out. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just said, "We were married. It was our money. You benefited too." Benefited how? By working overtime to fund her shopping binges and girls' trips? The most shocking part wasn't just the financial betrayal. It was finding out my own lawyer advised me that going after her for fraud would drag on for years, cost more than I'd ever see back, and might not even end in a clear win because we'd been legally married. So I'm stuck repairing credit I didn't ruin, paying for choices I didn't make, while she posts independent woman quotes on Instagram. By the time I learned the full picture, the accounts were in collections, the divorce was finalized, and the only real advice anyone had was, pay it off and guard your information next time. How do you fix something when the system shrugs and basically says, you picked her? Story 8. I learned too late that my son isn't biologically mine, and I still call him my son. My ex and I had fertility issues, or so I thought. We tried for years. Then she went on a girls' trip, came back different. Suddenly she was pregnant. The timeline was weird, but I wanted it so badly that I shoved the math out of my head and believed her story about late ovulation and miracle timing. I cut the cord. I did midnight feedings. I worked overtime so she could stay home. That kid was my entire world. Fast forward 8 years and a messy divorce. She claimed I was emotionally distant, which anyone who saw me with my son would laugh at. I fought hard for 50-50 custody and got it. It was the one win I held on to. Then one day, I took him to the pediatrician. New doctor, full family history forms. I wrote everything down. The doctor looked confused. His blood type doesn't line up with what you've written here for you and the mom. Are you sure? Something inside me went cold. I ordered a DNA test for fun. Pretended it was one of those ancestry kits. He's not mine. 0%. When I confronted her, she burst into tears and admitted she'd had an affair right around that girl's trip. The guy bailed. She said, you always wanted to be a dad. I knew you'd be better for him than his real father. So she made a unilateral decision that I'd be a dad to a child conceived in betrayal, then built our entire life on a secret. By the time I knew, that boy already called me dad, drew me in his school projects, cried when I dropped him off. I could fight in court and maybe lose him completely. Or I could shut up and keep being his father. I chose him. The shocking truth is that my marriage was a lie. The even more shocking truth is that I'd still burn my own heart to protect the one good thing that came out of it. Story 9. I found out that while I thought we were working on us, my ex-wife and her friends had a group chat dedicated to mocking everything I said in therapy. Near the end, we agreed to couples counseling. It was brutal, but I felt hopeful. Finally, we were unpacking real stuff. I admitted to my communication issues, my shutdowns, even talked about childhood trauma. I cried in front of them. I almost never cry. After the divorce, a mutual friend accidentally sent me a screenshot meant for someone else. It was from a group chat with my ex and her closest friends. At the top were my initials. Underneath, LMFAO, he cried again in therapy. Tell him about your childhood, bro. Did he do the, I'm just trying my best speech? Scroll up. More screenshots. She'd been taking notes after sessions, twisting my vulnerable moments into jokes. My panic attacks, my fear of becoming like my father, my attempts at I statements. They rated my apologies like a talent show. The friend who sent it called me right away, sobbing, saying she couldn't pretend anymore. She admitted they'd been doing this for months, that my ex would leave therapy and immediately run to them with fresh material. All those times my ex rolled her eyes when I tried a new communication tool. All the times she acted bored when I said, I feel, instead of, you always. She'd already torn it to pieces in a private group. The shocking truth wasn't just that she didn't want to fix us. It was realizing my most honest, raw moments were entertainment. You can't rebuild intimacy with someone who treats your vulnerability like meme content. Story 10. I learned my ex-wife never wanted a husband. She wanted a cover story. From the start, she was not very into sex. I respected it. I thought maybe it was trauma, hormones, stress. We focused on companionship instead. Travel, hobbies, hosting dinners. Everyone called us the perfect couple. We divorced after 6 years. Her reason? I don't feel like a wife. I feel like your roommate. I was blindsided but too exhausted to fight. A year later, she asked to meet up for coffee. She looked lighter, happier. There was a woman with her. Short hair, nervous smile. My ex introduced her as just a friend. The vibe said otherwise. After some small talk, my ex asked the woman to grab more sugar. The second she walked away, my ex blurted, I owe you the truth. I'm gay. I've known since I was a teenager. She told me she married me because it was easier to be what everyone expected, especially with her conservative family. I was safe, respectable, good husband material, someone she knew wouldn't cheat or hurt her. She thought she could force herself into straightness. While I was lying awake wondering why I couldn't turn her on, she was lying awake wondering why she didn't feel anything for me at all. The gut punch wasn't just that she used me as camouflage. It was thinking of all the years I spent believing I was unattractive, broken, not enough man. All the mental gymnastics I did to avoid suspecting the truth because I didn't want to be that guy, accusing his wife of faking it. By the time I knew the marriage was done, she was finally in a relationship that made sense to her, and I was left rewiring my entire self-esteem. There's no fixing a marriage built on someone else's fear of themselves. You just walk away, holding the weight of a lie that was never really about you, until it crushed you anyway. Story 11. I learned my ex-wife and my brother had been emotionally married to each other the entire time. We divorced because she said I was emotionally unavailable and never really there for her. It hurt, but it wasn't completely crazy. I'm not the most expressive guy. I accepted it and tried to move on. My brother was my rock through it. Constant support, long calls. You deserve better, man. A year after the divorce, my phone died and I borrowed my brother's iPad during a family visit to check my email. His iMessage was still logged in. I wasn't snooping until I saw my ex's name pinned at the top. Curiosity became a punch to the gut. Their chat went back years. Long, late-night paragraphs where she'd tell him all the things she wished she could tell me, but I wouldn't understand. He'd answer with stuff like, "If I were your husband, I'd never make you feel alone. You deserve someone who listens." They sent each other songs that remind me of you, vented about my flaws like they were teammates stuck with the same idiot boss. When we had arguments, I'd later see screenshots where she forwarded him my texts, and he told her how to respond. The worst part? The timestamps. On nights I thought my brother was checking in on me, he was texting her first. On mornings, she was weirdly distant. She'd already had a heart-to-heart with him. Did they sleep together? I don't know. At this point, it almost doesn't matter. They built an entire parallel relationship where I was the problem they bonded over. By the time I knew the divorce was final, my relationship with my brother already strained for no reason, and their chat history ended right around the date my ex moved to another city. The shocking truth wasn't that she found emotional support elsewhere. It was that my own brother rehearsed being my replacement while pretending to help me save my marriage. Story 12. I learned my ex-wife had planned the divorce before she even got pregnant, with the pregnancy as part of the plan. We'd been arguing about kids. I wanted to wait until we were more stable. She wanted them before 30 or not at all. We compromised at, let's revisit in a year. A few months later, she accidentally got pregnant. I blamed myself for being careless. She instantly shifted gears into perfect mom mode. Nursery Pinterest boards, baby books, lectures about finances. I stepped up, took extra work, did everything I could. Our kid was barely 2 when she asked for a divorce. No affair, no big fight. Just, I'm unhappy. I need to do what's best for me. She went after child support hard. My lawyer said she seemed unusually prepared. 2 years later, a paralegal from her old attorney's office found me on LinkedIn. She was quitting the firm and said she'd carried guilt about my case. She told me my ex had first come in for a consultation before she got pregnant, asking how long she needed to be married and how custody support would likely play out if we have a child soon. She literally asked, would having a baby secure my ability to leave? She knew she was already done with me. She wanted the identity of mom, the financial stability of one household plus child support, and the moral high ground of being the one who left an unhappy marriage, not a bad man. So while I was freaking out about diapers and night feeds, she was executing a strategy. While I thought a baby might bring us closer, she was building an exit plan with a guaranteed connection to my bank account for 18 plus years. By the time I learned the truth, my kid already knew me as the weekend parent. The court orders were in place, and my ex was Instagramming quotes about choosing yourself. You can't fix something that was never about us. It was always about her future. She just forgot to mention I was a line item in it. Story 13. I learned my ex-wife spent years building a secret case against me online, so that when she finally left, everyone already knew I was the villain. Our breakup shocked me. People I'd known for years suddenly went cold. Mutual friends stopped responding. Her family, who once hugged me at holidays, blocked me. I assumed she'd just told them a very one-sided version of events. One night, a coworker quietly pulled me aside and asked if I'd ever hit her. I was stunned. Absolutely not. She showed me a TikTok my ex made under a soft-voiced, vague title like, "When you're healing from an angry husband." No names, but the details were us. Our city, our careers, even our dog. Comments were full of, "Leave him, girl. You're so strong. Document everything." Curiosity turned into horror. I found more. Burner accounts on Reddit, Instagram, Facebook support groups. For years, she'd been dropping breadcrumbs about an emotionally abusive partner who gaslit her, controlled money, and screamed for no reason. Arguments where we both yelled became screaming tirades. Times I asked where the money went became financial control. Me saying, "Can we talk when we're calm?" became withholding affection. She screenshotted snippets of texts, cropped out her part, and posted them asking strangers whether she was crazy for feeling unsafe. Of course, they told her to run. By the time she filed for divorce, she had a curated archive. Dates, vague stories, crying selfies. Not enough for court, but more than enough to convince everyone around her that leaving me was an act of survival. The shocking truth wasn't just that she lied. It's that she rehearsed leaving me for years in public, just anonymously, while still kissing me goodnight, planning trips, and telling me, "We'll get through this." You can't fix a marriage with someone who's been writing your obituary online while you thought you were still alive. Story 14. I learned my ex-wife's family literally paid her to leave me, and she took the deal months before I knew anything was wrong. Her parents never liked me. I wasn't from their circle, didn't make as much as they thought their daughter deserved, and refused to take a job at her dad's company. We butted heads, but I figured it was normal in-law tension. When she asked for a divorce, she said she was tired of carrying the relationship, that I lacked drive. It hurt, but I assumed it was her own opinion. Months later, her younger sister got drunk at a wedding and spilled everything. Apparently, my father-in-law had offered my ex a fresh start fund if she left me. Down payment on a condo, a new car, help with legal fees. The condition: she had to be child-free when she left and agree not to ask for any of the family business shares tied up with me. They'd been having these conversations behind my back for almost a year. Text messages the sister showed me were brutal. "If he won't join the family business, he's dead weight. You won't reach your potential with him. Think of this as a buyout. Take it." So all those arguments about my career stalling, all the pressure about buying a bigger house, all the comments about men who take care of their families weren't random. They were prepping her to view me as a bad investment. By the time I found out, she already had the new condo, the car, the rebrand. Single, focused, thriving. Her parents looked smug at family events involving the kids, like they'd rescued her. The shocking truth wasn't just that my in-laws hated me, it's that they treated my marriage like a stock to dump. And she agreed to cash out while still telling me we were working on things. Story 15. I learned my ex-wife never actually wanted to move back to my home country with me. She quietly made sure I couldn't. I'm from another country originally. When we met abroad, the plan was always, "We'll live in your country eventually." It was a big part of why I felt safe marrying her. Going home someday was my anchor. We both applied for jobs there, or so I thought. Every time I brought it up, there was some new delay. Bad timing. Market's rough. Maybe next year when we have more savings. I trusted her. She was better at logistics. After the divorce, I finally decided to move back alone. I called the embassy to ask about my paperwork status from years ago, thinking I'd have to start over. The officer said, "You never responded to our follow-up. We assumed you lost interest." Follow-up? They'd emailed me an interview date, additional document request, and even mailed a letter to our home at the time. I'd seen nothing. I asked for copies. They sent scans. And there it was, my name, our old address, and sticky notes scanned in where someone had written, "Return to sender, move." The signature on one of the notices looked familiar. Her. I remembered now. Boxes I never saw the contents of. Envelopes she'd say, "Oh, just junk mail." The times she insisted on being the one to handle the grown-up stuff. When I confronted her over the phone, she finally admitted it. She'd panicked about leaving her family and career. She told herself if the process fell through naturally, we'd accept we were meant to stay. So she made it fall through. My chance to go home, build a life there with a spouse, maybe have kids near my family, that fork in the road closed without me even knowing we'd reached it. By the time I learned the truth, we were divorced. The window for an easier immigration path was gone, and starting over meant 10 times the cost and effort. The shocking truth wasn't just that she lied. It's realizing I lost a whole version of my future because someone else quietly decided it was too inconvenient for them. Story 16. I learned that the infertility that destroyed our marriage was never mine. We tried for a baby for 4 years. Negative tests, doctor visits, awkward sex schedules. Eventually, she started looking at me like I was broken. Our fights revolved around it. "You don't understand what it's like to be a woman who can't get pregnant. Maybe your swimmers just suck and you're too proud to admit it." My tests were always borderline, not great. But no doctor flat out said, "This is your fault." Still, I carried the guilt. When she finally said she couldn't keep living in limbo, I agreed to the divorce. I thought I was setting her free to become a mom with someone better. 2 years later, I ran into her old OB/GYN at a charity event. She recognized me and, in classic oversharing fashion, asked how things were going after treatment. I said, "We never did treatment. We just fell apart." Her face changed. She asked very carefully if I'd ever seen my ex's full test results. I hadn't. My ex always said, "They're normal. It's probably you." The doctor lowered her voice and said something like, "I can't share records, but I hope you know it wasn't all on you," then walked away like she'd already said too much. I lawyered up and requested every medical document with my name on it from that clinic. Because I'd been present at some appointments, my name was tied to a few notes. One of them, patient informed of extremely low chance of carrying to term due to uterine scarring. Advised that conception would be highly unlikely without intervention. Patient declined to inform spouse at this time, dated a year before we even started trying. So she knew. The entire time. She knew it was almost impossible. And instead of telling me, she let me drown in guilt, let our intimacy die, let our marriage rot around an unspoken doom she'd already been told about. We didn't divorce because we couldn't have a baby. We divorced because she chose silence and blame over honesty. By the time I learned the truth, she'd remarried and adopted. And I was left grieving a family we might have built differently if she'd just told me our actual odds. Story 17. I learned my ex-wife rehearsed a fake domestic violence story for months, just in case she wanted to leave. No one ever hit anyone in our marriage. We yelled, slammed doors, said things we regret, but there were never bruises. When she filed for divorce and requested a protective order, I thought I was in a nightmare. She told the court I'd pushed her into a wall, blocked exits, threw things at her. I swore it wasn't true. The judge didn't fully believe me, but with no prior record, they gave a temporary order and told us to keep distance. I lost friends overnight. My own sister asked, "Did you really throw a plate at her?" I didn't. I still hear that question in my head. The shocking truth came from the most unexpected place. One of her friends, a bridesmaid, who showed up at my place months later, shaking. She said she couldn't stomach the guilt anymore. Apparently, for almost a year, my ex had been telling their friend group stories about how scared she was of me. Not just real fights, but invented scenes. She'd workshop details. Would a judge care if he punched the wall? What if I say he grabbed my wrist too hard? Should I take pictures of random bruises just in case? They thought she was venting. One friend told her to start keeping a log in case she needed to protect herself. So she wrote it all down like a screenplay. Dates, times, invented threats. By the time she wanted out, she had a narrative ready. And the part that really broke me? Her friend admitted my ex had said, "If I go the abuse route, he'll agree to anything just to avoid a public trial. He's too proud." She wasn't scared of me. She was betting on my horror at being labeled an abuser. By the time I knew how calculated it was, the damage was done. Google my name in our city and you still see the words domestic dispute tied to my divorce filings. There's no fixing a reputation someone decided to murder in advance. Story 18. I learned my ex-wife had a whole secret life online, where she was single, child-free, and making money off our bedroom. We were struggling financially. She kept saying we were barely getting by, that my salary wasn't enough. I picked up side gigs, cut back on hobbies, sold my motorcycle. She always seemed stressed but never offered specifics. After the divorce, part of the settlement involved disclosing all assets and income. Our lawyers did a standard dig. One day my attorney slid a file across the table and asked, "Do you know what this is?" It was a tax form. Payouts from a content creation platform. The username was hers. The amount? More than I made in a year. I didn't recognize the platform. He told me to really Google it. I did. It was subscription-based adult content. I found her profile before she managed to delete it. Blurred face, but I'd know that body anywhere. Our bedroom rug. Our couch. My old t-shirt. The captions were all written like she was some bored single woman living alone, exploring her wild side. While I was stressing over the electricity bill, she was making bank and stashing it. While I thought our sex life was dying because of stress, she was performing on schedule, with ring light and lingerie sets I never saw in person. The kicker? In a buried folder in our shared cloud, I discovered a spreadsheet. Upload dates, earnings, equipment purchases, and next to each month's profit notes like, goal, enough to move out, almost there, don't need him soon. She wasn't just hiding income. She was using my home, my trust, and our intimacy as a stage for an exit plan. By the time I understood how long it had gone on, the divorce was finalized, and my only options were blow it up publicly and traumatize our kids, shut up, and live with the knowledge that strangers saw more of my wife than I did in the last year of our marriage. You can't fix a relationship where one person saw the other as an unwitting prop in their side hustle. Story 19. I learned that every coincidental crisis in our marriage was time to keep me from leaving first. For years, I felt unhappy. No big villain moment, just a drip of constant criticism, cold shoulders, and silent punishments. Every time I quietly thought, maybe I should leave, something major happened. She'd get sick, a relative would die, she'd lose a job. It always felt like the universe slapped me for even considering divorce. After we finally split, her idea, not mine, I started untangling old paperwork while moving. Tucked into a box of her stuff she forgot was a leather-bound journal. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. It wasn't a diary. It was a strategy notebook. Pages and pages of entries like, felt him pulling away this week. Talked about being so depressed to make him feel guilty. Think he's considering leaving. Time to bring up how scared I am of being alone. Cried about my abandonment issues right after he mentioned therapy. For both of us. He dropped it. Then, next to the date where I know we had a huge argument about how I couldn't keep living like that, he said he doesn't know if he can do this anymore. Must remind him of my health problems and how I wouldn't survive alone. Can't let him leave first. It got worse. There were notes about not applying for certain jobs because if I earn too much, he'll feel free to walk. Notes about bringing up my parents' divorce whenever I talked about needing space. She wasn't faking every illness or tragedy. That would be too simple. She was weaponizing real issues, saving them for when she felt my patience thinning, pulling them out like emotional grenades to keep me tethered. The shocking truth wasn't that she left me. It's that she'd been playing chess with my conscience for years, just to make sure she was the one who got to slam the door. By the time I knew, the game was over and I'd already spent a decade apologizing for moves I never even made. Story 20. I learned my ex-wife didn't accidentally ruin my career. She did it to make sure I couldn't afford to leave. I'm a teacher, not exactly a high-powered job, but I loved it. I had a reputation at my school for being strict but fair. Kids respected me, parents liked me, admin trusted me. Then rumors started. A student claiming I'd singled him out unfairly. A parent complaining that I'd humiliated her daughter. Nothing serious at first, just noise. I tightened up, documented everything, assumed it was normal school drama. At home, my ex would say things like, "You're too harsh, kids are sensitive now. You can't talk to them like your teachers did." During our last year together, a formal complaint landed on my file. Anonymous tip that I was emotionally abusive, targeting female students, making inappropriate comments about outfits. It didn't stick, but it was enough for my principal to suggest I look for a fresh start elsewhere. Losing that job gutted me. I took a lower-paying role at a rougher school. Money got tight. Every time I hinted at divorce, my ex reminded me, "You can't even pay bills now. How will you afford 2 homes?" After the divorce, one of her coworkers, who'd never liked how she talked about me, reached out. She sent me screenshots from a burner email account on her office computer. My ex had been the anonymous tip. She'd also been in a mom Facebook group under a fake profile, stirring up minor parent complaints about me into red flag teacher narratives. She'd email the school pretending to be concerned parents. Why? In one of the emails to her coworkers, she wrote, "If he thinks his career is fragile, he'll never risk a divorce. I'm not ending up like my mom with nothing." So she torched the one thing that gave me pride and stability just to box me in financially. Then, once my reputation was damaged and my options limited, she filed anyway, now with the upper hand in negotiations. By the time I learned the truth, it had been years. The old job wouldn't touch me. Those rumors never really die in education. There's no fixing a marriage with someone who's willing to burn your entire future just to keep you scared a little longer. Story 21. I learned my ex-wife had quietly rewritten our entire marriage in a private journal for a memoir she planned to publish after leaving me. We always joked that she'd write a book someday. She was a good storyteller, dramatic, loved turning mundane events into funny anecdotes at parties. I thought it was a personality trait. After the divorce, I went back to the old house to pick up some boxes she'd forgotten in the attic. One of them broke open on the stairs. Out spilled notebooks. I almost just stuffed them back in, but my name on a page caught my eye. It wasn't a diary. It was draft after draft of chapters. Working titles like Escaping Him, Surviving the Perfect Husband, Love in a Cage. I sat on the floor and read. She'd taken real events from our life and twisted them into cinematic abuse scenes. A conversation about budgeting became a chapter about me monitoring every cent. A fight where we both yelled became a story about me cornering her in the kitchen. She described our wedding as the day my prison bars snapped shut. Our honeymoon, where I thought we were happy, as a fog of forced smiles and silent dread. The worst part? The timestamps. She'd started writing this 3 years into our marriage. We made it 10. That means for 7 years she lived with me, laughed with me, took vacations and family photos, while simultaneously outlining a version of me she could sell. I flipped to the last notebook and saw an outline for the final chapters. Chapter 18, The Breaking Point. Serve him papers. Chapter 19, Freedom. Chapter 20, What I'd tell any woman stuck with a man like him. She had literally storyboarded our end. By the time I found it, we were already divorced. To the world, I was the bland ex-husband in her vague "I survived" posts. Somewhere on her laptop is a polished version of me as a monster, ready for the day she needs a brand boost. You can't fix a marriage that, to the other person, was always just source material. Story 22. I learned my ex-wife had been hiding a 7-figure inheritance while we couldn't afford basic things, and she waited to cash it in until after she left. Money was our constant fight. I made decent money, nothing crazy but enough. Still, everything was always tight. She'd say, "You have no idea what it's like to worry about bills." I picked up extra shifts, sold my hobbies, skipped vacations. During the divorce, she painted me as irresponsible. He never provided the lifestyle he promised. Her lawyer leaned hard into my financial instability when arguing for more support. I felt humiliated. A year later, her uncle died. Small-town gossip travels fast, and my cousin sent me a screenshot from a local article. Her standing next to a lawyer, big check in hand, caption about long-trusted family trust finally being passed down. Family trust? I did some digging. Her grandfather had set up a trust for all the grandkids with staggered payouts. One portion at 25, another at 30, and the remainder at 35 or upon marriage, depending on conditions. She turned 30 during our marriage. I remember the party. She joked about feeling old. What she didn't mention was the 6-figure deposit that hit her account that month. It got worse. I eventually got my hands on a copy of the public probate records. That trust had been paying out since before we even met. Not millions at once, but enough. Enough that "we can't afford that" was a lie. She'd been letting me grind myself into the ground while hoarding her inheritance as my security if this doesn't work out. Her exact words to a friend, according to a text I later saw, "I'm not stupid enough to blow Grandpa's money on this man's dreams. If it fails, I'm not starting from zero." Our entire marriage, I thought we were a team struggling together. The shocking truth was she'd put herself in first class and left me in coach, then divorced me for not flying us high enough. By the time I learned, the house was sold, the account settled, and the judge had already bought the story that she was the financially vulnerable one. Story 23. I learned my ex-wife had been forging messages from my friends to isolate me, and she did it so smoothly I helped her cut them off. Over the years, my circle shrank. At first, it made sense. People moved, got busy, had kids. But some friendships ended with weird, jagged edges. A best man who suddenly didn't want to be involved in couples drama. A college buddy who called me controlling out of nowhere. I only ever saw these blow-ups through screenshots she showed me. "Look what your friend texted me. He said you talk trash about me when I'm not around. He called me crazy. I'm done." She'd cry, ask why my friends hated her, accuse me of not defending her. I'd get angry on her behalf, stop replying to group chats, decline invites. Eventually, the invitations stopped coming. After the divorce, I ran into one of those supposedly toxic friends at a bar. We both did the awkward nod. Then he said, "Man, I'm sorry about everything. I still can't believe she made you block me." "Made me?" I said. "You called her a parasite." His face went white. "I never said that." We compared phones. I didn't have the old messages. New phone, fresh start. He did. Our last real conversation was him asking if I was okay because I'd gone quiet. That was it. No insults. No drama. Later, another friend showed me his side of a fight he supposedly had with my ex over text. On his phone, it stopped at, "Hey, is everything okay between you two?" On her screenshots to me, there were lines like, "Tell him to stop whining to me about his wife. She's insane, bro." Different font. Slightly different bubble shape. Once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. She'd been using text apps to write fake messages, taking screenshots, and showing them to me as proof that my friends disrespected her. Then she'd demand loyalty. "If you stay close to people who hate me, I'll never feel safe." By the time I realized the truth, years of friendships were dead. Group chats deleted. Numbers blocked. You can't fix a marriage where one person systematically burns every bridge behind you, then blames you for having nowhere else to stand. Story 24. I learned my ex-wife didn't suddenly change after the wedding. She just stopped performing the persona she'd built from a dating coach's playbook. Before marriage, she was the perfect partner. Supportive, flirty, low drama. She loved my hobbies, listened to my work ranting, never brought up exes. We rarely fought. My friend said I'd hit the jackpot. About 6 months after the wedding, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, she hated my hobbies, mocked my job, and picked fights over tiny things. How I breathed, how I chewed, how I folded towels. I thought it was stress. A rough patch, maybe depression. I suggested therapy. She scoffed. "You're the one who changed after getting a ring," she'd say. We divorced 3 years later. She told everyone I baited and switched, that I'd been love bombing and then got lazy. The truth showed up in the dumbest way possible. A YouTube autoplay rabbit hole. Months after the divorce, I left a video running while cooking. When I came back, some dating guru was on screen, teaching women how to lock down high-value men. I froze. The phrases were almost word for word what she'd said when we met. Mirroring his interests. Never starting heavy conversations. Carefully timed compliments. Never talk about money until after he's emotionally invested. Curious and nauseous, I dug into the channel's older videos. Comments flooded by a username that was hers. Same avatar she used on another site. She'd been an active member for years. One video was titled, "How to Stop Performing Once You've Secured Commitment." The advice, once you're married, drop the act and see if he can handle the real you. If he complains, he's never loved you, only the fantasy. So that's what changed, not her. My access to the performance. The shocking truth is I never actually knew the woman I married. I knew her research project. By the time I figured it out, I was already the villain in her story about men who only love you when you're easy. Story 25. I learned my ex-wife had secretly recorded our entire marriage to splice together a highlight reel of my worst moments. She was always on her phone. I thought she was scrolling, texting, maybe doom scrolling like everyone else. Sometimes she'd casually set it on the counter while we argued. I assumed she was distracted and it made me even angrier. During the divorce, her lawyer hinted she had evidence of my volatile behavior. I braced for twisted stories, not a file. Months later, after everything was finalized, one of her tech-savvy coworkers reached out to me. He said he'd left his job after realizing he'd helped her edit something messed up. He forwarded me a link to a cloud folder she'd accidentally shared with the wrong email. Inside were hundreds of audio and video files. She'd been recording for years. Fights, tense conversations, even normal evenings where she'd ask leading questions until I snapped. Then I found the real horror. A professionally edited compilation titled "Living with Him Proof." It was a montage of me at my worst. Raising my voice, swearing, sighing, saying, "You always do this," rubbing my temples, slamming a cabinet door. No context. No clips of her mocking, needling, or poking at raw spots for hours beforehand. Just me, chopped into a monster. Timestamp overlays made it look like this was our daily life, back to back. Clips from 2017 spliced next to 2021. Different haircuts, different apartments, stitched into one long explosion. She'd apparently used it in therapy, in online support groups, maybe even shown it to friends. Look what I live with. The most shocking part wasn't that I looked bad. I did. I'm not proud of those moments. It was seeing how meticulously she'd curated them, like she'd been directing a documentary where the ending was, "And that's why I had to leave." By the time I knew, people had already seen that reel. Their minds were made up. In their heads, I'm forever frozen mid-yell in some jump cut hell. You can't fix anything when someone decided years ago to film you not to understand you, but to make sure nobody else ever would.